Hello, everyone. Welcome to Film Frauds, where we give our completely unprofessional and 100% biased on the films of today, tomorrow, and yesteryear. My name is Matt, and with me, as always, are Mark.
Mark,
Hello.
you're supposed to say, oh my god.
Oh, wait, what? Sorry,
We
I missed
discussed this
out.
before. Supposed to say
Oh.
hi
Oh, hello.
when I say Mark, and then with us as well is Tyler.
Should I take another long pause too, just to continue it so Mark doesn't
Yeah,
feel bad?
just do it right
It's
now.
for
Pretend like you didn't just
dramatic
talk and take a long
purposes.
pause and say hi.
I just
Hi.
forgot what my name was.
Okay. Yeah, it happens sometimes. You fell asleep during
Yeah.
that part.
Mhm.
Yeah. I enjoyed it too much.
And today we are continuing our director's choice, starting with my director's choice, Park Chan-wook. And of course, we're starting with his most known film, Oldboy, part of the Vengeance trilogy. And Park Chan-wook was probably my introduction into South Korean cinema, which is probably my favorite nationality, I guess, cinema nationality, South Korean movies. If that makes any sense. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's sort of. I think you
I
just
guess.
Say,
I don't know
yeah.
how else I'd word it.
A lot of my favorite movies come from South Korea. That's like the easiest way to put it.
Yeah.
And Tyler, what is your history with Park Chan-wook?
I'm very similar to you. You introduced me to Drive when I was about like 13, 14. And
Yeah.
that was kind of like, oh man, movies can be really good. And then when I started looking at more movies, Oldboy was one of the ones that constantly came up. It's like, if you really want to get into film, you should really check out Oldboy. It kind of seems to be like the gateway into South Korean cinema.
Yeah.
And so I watched it when I was 13, and it was like a lot for me at the time. And I didn't know how to process a lot of it because I was really young.
Yeah.
And then, so I watched it again, maybe 4 or 5 years later when I got right into college.
Yeah.
And then I was like, man, this movie's wonderful. And then again, I watched it for the third time today for this, but this was definitely kind of the introduction to foreign movies for me.
Yeah.
I'd seen foreign movies before, but this was like, wow, foreign movies can really have their own kind of sense of style and identity and kind of be specifically tied to one culture.
Yeah. So the way we start these director series is that we talk about the director before we go into the movie. So we're going to go into Oldboy in a bit, but continuing with you, Tyler, is there anything specific about Park Chan-wook's directing style, because you've seen a couple of his movies now, that you think makes him stand out, or you think helps you understand why he's one of the most well-known non-English language directors in the business today?
I feel like we should specify, and we should all say at least what movies of his we have seen. I've seen The Handmaiden, I've seen Stoker, I've seen Thirst, and I've seen Oldboy. There are a couple of his post Joint Security Squad movies that are really hard to find and that aren't that well received. He's a really prominent director of shorts and has that one TV show for AMC, The Little Drummer's Girl. Haven't not seen all of those, but I've seen 4 of his movies. And his own distinct style, because I want to bring this up in kind of a question about him, but it's this interesting use of kind of sex and sexuality as kind of either to kind of tie into the main themes of whatever movies he's talking about. I think in like The Handmaiden, the use of sex is basically, well, first I should say the use of sex is kind of its own character arc in The Handmaiden, where it goes from kind of this oppressive, kind of disgraced and nasty kind of idea to something that is eventually transitions to being liberating in a self of kind of self-actualization and realization and identity. And sex has a lot of like interesting arcs within his movies. Thirst has its own. Stoker, it's directly tied to kind of coming of age. And in Oldboy, it's a little bit weirder. But when I think of like Park Chan-wook, I think of like, I don't know a lot of other directors that kind of have their own thematic elements tied to sex and sexuality.
I would agree with you, especially with sex and violence and how the two are intertwined. Like there's a lot of violence in his movies as well, but never feels gratuitous or like unnecessary. It always feels appropriate for the story. Mark, what is your history with Park Chan-wook?
Oh, well, my history with Park Chan-wook started yesterday, as this is the first movie that I watched from him. I'm not going to say my thoughts quite yet, but he definitely has, Park Chan-wook definitely has a very distinct style.
Yeah.
And I was sort of taken aback by that. I was like, whoa, this is really something.
Yeah.
So after having watched Oldboy, I definitely feel quite compelled to see his other films. So that's my very short and brief history with Park Chan-wook.
So I've seen Oldboy. I've seen Sympathy for Lady Vengeance. I've seen The Handmaiden 4 times. and I just watched Joint Security Area, which is one of his earlier movies. And Handmaiden is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think the movie is a masterpiece. It's 2.5 hours long, but does not feel its length. I think Oldboy is also a masterpiece as well. Um, he is able to, first of all, no one directs flashbacks better than Park Chan-wook. You
No,
always
yes,
know when a flashback's happening, and it never feels like disjointed. Like sometimes, like you could have when there's a flashback scene coming, and it just feels awkward. Like
yep.
he's able to seamlessly transition to flashback scenes better than any other director, in my opinion. And he's able to both make his movies feel very exciting and also make them feel very tense. Like there's a scene we'll talk about in Oldboy later on, where I've already seen Oldboy once before, but the scene again, having rewatched it, like I was captivated and I couldn't believe what I was watching, and it was slow, but like it was so tense, and he's able to handle humor, violence, really any sort of element to a film expertly, and he's able to combine them all into one movie, kind of like a Tarantino-esque, where there's a good amount of humor, and action and drama. But I think that Park Chan-wook has like the sort of like play style to it. Like it feels like it feels like more theatrical. It feels like you're in a theater watching something. For I'd say more for Handmaiden, but there is
Yeah.
elements of it in his writing and in his directing in Oldboy and Lady Vengeance and other movies. But yeah, he's one of my favorite filmmakers ever. I'd say he's probably one of the best, considering I love every movie I've seen by him, and I'm only looking forward to more of what he's doing next. Yeah.
There's a definite kind of style with him where I think that I'm using this expression right, but he's an actor's director.
Yeah.
We'll go into it more with Oldboy and definitely The Handmaiden, and there's elements of it in kind of like Thurston Stoker, where you can definitely see him giving free rein to his actors and actresses. And whoever's in his movie, he often lets them kind of ad lib scenes and create their own kind of style, but he also kind of lets things slide. I don't want to again spoil it, but there's a scene in kind of Oldboy where the main character like hits his head, completely unscripted, but that's usually something that will a director who's very kind of controlling over his set, yeah.
Yeah.
Scorsese.
Scorsese, someone like Kubrick, someone like Fincher will kind of won't let kind of slide, but it's these kind of little elements that kind of add a lot of genuine humanity to his movies,
Yeah.
which I think is really kind of commendable. And it adds, because oftentimes his stories are very much larger than life. I mean, if you think of something like The Handmaiden or something like Thirst, where the stories are so grand, but they're also very human at the same time. And I
Yeah.
think that's a definite kind of plus to his directing and his directing style.
And there's a lot of thought behind his style as well, because we're talking about the Handmaiden very briefly during like the bed scene, like the bed scene in the Handmaiden. He said that he didn't want any men to be on the set because he wanted the women to feel as comfortable as possible, and he directed the scene like absently, like he controlled the camera like in another room, so like no one would see him there. So like so like you could tell that he cares a lot about his actors, and he puts a lot of thought into every single shot that he does, and I think that cannot be commended enough. And I was watching YMS's review for Oldboy last night as well, where like the Spike Lee Oldboy, and like just from the intro alone in the original Oldboy, you get so much more out of it in such a more condensed period of time than you get in the Spike Lee Oldboy. And this is a testament to probably how much he thinks of shots and how much he thinks of his own writing as well, and how he's able to tell stories just through visual acting alone, and it's pretty amazing. But yeah.
There are times I think there's really evident in his movie Thirst, where in all of the whole, but there are times when he has a deliberate kind of sense of what is supposed to happen. I don't think Thirst is a perfect movie, but when Park Chan-wook kind of has that clear vision, and I think the latter hour and 20 something minutes of Thirst, there is a definite kind of gravitas you feel to it. It feels like it's another kind of level of directing and story and acting where things are just kind of heightened, but still in a believable level. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you can tell when he has that clear sense of vision and where he wants to go and how he wants to direct it. But because Mark, I don't want to. I know you're not too familiar with him, and I just want to ask one question for you guys. One of my talking points per se, but I'm really curious about the debate versus like Bong Joon-ho versus Park Chan-wook as kind of some of the most prolific South Korean directors. And I know they aren't the most too. There's a couple of them more like Takashi Miike and Lee Chang-dong and the guy who directed I Saw the Devil are kind of like the 5 most prominent. But how do you compare these two directors? Because I'm really curious about this. Like, do you see one that's better? See one that's kind of has a more distinct kind of area?
Mark, you can go first if you want.
Okay. Well, the Bong Joon-ho movies that I've seen are Parasite and The Host. And I've only seen Oldboy, as I stated, from Park Chan-wook. Park Chan-wook definitely seems more stylized. I mean, you could almost, I mean, just based off like what I saw from Oldboy, you could sort of put Park Chan-wook as a genre in and of itself, as like Wes Anderson's a genre, or like you know Kubrick is a genre, because it's like very distinct. I wouldn't say Bong Joon-ho is particularly distinct. Like you can like automatically identify like this is a Bong Joon-ho movie.
Yep.
But they're very unique. They're both very unique filmmakers, and I wouldn't really compare the two. I
Yeah.
guess.
I would say that they both balance different elements very well. Like, as I just said with Park Chan-wook, he's able to balance humor, drama, action, all expertly, in my opinion. I'd say Bong Joon-ho does the same thing. I would say that as writers, Bong Joon-ho's movies feel more topical, more political than Park Chan-wook. Like, I feel like Park Chan-wook is more focused on like the human condition. Like, Oldboy is very much like I don't think Oldboy really says anything about society. It says more about society. It says more about it says more about like humans and like the nature of vengeance and what is the purpose of vengeance. Where you look at Bong Joon-ho's movies and it's Okja talks about animal cruelty.
Yep.
Parasite talks about the wealth, the
Snowpiercer's kind of a commentary on
commentary on wealth, and then The Host commentary on global warming and how neglectful humans can be of nature. So I would say that's a big difference. I say because Park Chan-wook feels more theatrical. It feels more like something you feel like you're following humans more. Whereas even though the characters in Bong Joon-ho movies are really great, it feels like he's saying something. There's some more grander political statement Bong Joon-ho is making.
Yeah, I think Bong Joon-ho is a more consistent filmmaker. And again, I haven't seen all Park Chan-wook's movies, but from what I gather from kind of reviews and kind of gaining a sense of what people think, Bong Joon-ho makes a certain, and I actually really like Mark's kind of idea of Park Chan-wook being kind of a genre in of itself. Bong Joon-ho's movies are consistently good.
Yeah.
Like, and some elevate above the rest. I think Okja and I think The Host and I think Parasite are kind of elevated above the rest. But he has this kind of like through line of kind of just B grade movies that nothing really seeps below that. I haven't seen his first one, Barking Dogs Never Bite. You have
It's not that good.
It's not that good. Okay, awesome. Just completely destroyed the entire point. But Park Chan-wook, I feel like his peak as a director is a masterclass of cinema. I don't feel like Bong Joon-ho is there.
Yeah.
I feel like the highs in something like The Handmaiden and Oldboy and Thirst are far and above better than what Bong Joon-ho can do. But Bong Joon-ho has the more kind of complete set. I think theatrical is a really good word and I feel like when I think of theatrical, I think of kind of like raw and I think of kind of unkempt a little bit. And I feel like and that's not a negative kind of association with the movies. I feel like Park Chan-wook's movies have that kind of like chaotic feel. While Bong Joon-ho movies feel very tight and kind of controlled, and they know what they're doing, and from beginning to end.
Yeah, I could get behind that. I would say that, like you said Bong Joon-ho movies are more consistently B's. I would say they're more consistently A's.
Okay.
And I'd say that occasionally, but then Park Chan-wook can occasionally get that A plus sort of material.
Yeah.
So I would say I agree with you. Just that I would just give Bong Joon movies more of a higher grade.
That makes sense. Again, South Korean cinema and I have an interesting relationship where I think they're really good, but only 2 movies I've seen so far have like greatly connected with me.
Yeah.
But that's kind of besides the point. I was just really curious on what you guys thought about that because they're arguably the 2 most popular South Korean directors. I mean, and probably some of the 2 most popular South Korean, or not just directors working today.
Yeah, from what I know, like the discussions I've seen, like on like Reddit, it's like if you want to get into South Korean cinema, it's like Parasite or Oldboy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I always see it's always those 2 movies that are like the gateway drugs, I guess, to exploring South Korean cinema.
Yeah.
So,
Matt, do you have any talking points any themes or ideas you want to talk about Park Chan-wook?
I have some talking points, but they're mostly revolved around Oldboy. So if you want to transition to Oldboy, if you're out of talking points as well for Park Chan-wook.
Yeah, because Oldboy I feel like it kind of encapsulates a lot of Park Chan-wook as a whole, because
Yeah.
his movies are very like all stylized in one specific thing. It's sex, it's violence, and it's kind of vengeance and anger and hatred and
Yeah.
revenge. It's all those kind of things, but all of his movies are like that.
Yeah.
And like you said with Bong Joon-ho, where one movie's a commentary on the wealth disparity, while one movie's a commentary on kind of global warming and humans' neglect of the environment. There isn't that kind of distinct like, oh yeah, two Bong Joon-ho movies are very the same. It's very intriguing.
Yeah.
And but that's our Park Chan-wook discussion. Now we're talking about Oldboy. I don't feel like we don't have to do non-spoilers. This is one of those famous
Yeah,
movies of all time.
I think everyone knows like
Mark,
the big twist in the movie.
I'm actually curious, Mark. What did you know about this movie beforehand? Because I knew about the twist, and I knew about the ending and what kind of happens in the movie before I saw it.
Yeah, because this is Tyler and I's
This is my
second
third.
watch of the movie.
This is
This is your third watch of the movie?
Yeah, I
This
watched
is
it
my
when I
second
was-
watch, and then this is Mark's first watch.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm curious as to Mark what you knew about the movie going in and how you feel about the movie now.
There's two things I knew. I knew that it was, for the most part, very violent, and I knew that incest is part of the story, one of the critical parts of the story. That's basically what I knew. I didn't know. I think I knew that it was like the mother or the father-daughter incest. I didn't know it was the antagonist had a whole other incest story going. I did not know that. So when it was like revealed that the antagonist, I can't remember his name, he was the one. Lee Woo Jin, when he was seeing his sister, when it was revealed that he was in love with his sister, I was like, oh, okay, this is many layered.
Yeah.
But overall, I really enjoyed it. I felt sort of after he gets out of the prison, I guess, like that short, like briefly when he gets out and he's like going around and sort of figure things out, and he gets like the phone in the wallet. He's like in the sushi restaurant.
Yeah.
I was like, I loved all those sequences, but then like in that middle period, I guess like post hallway scene to like the final fight, it slowed down a little too much for me, I guess. I think I'd have a different opinion of it if I watched it again. But I really enjoyed it, and there's some sequences in this film that I loved. Oh my God, did I love it. And I'll state it now. The one that I was absolutely blown away by was when he's in the elevator and it's the flashback. And then and then it goes to the gun like this, and he goes like that, and then it goes to him blowing his brains out.
That's masterful editing right there.
Yeah.
I could not believe what I was watching. I was like, this is something else. That's
So
why
the cut between Lee Woo Jin as a younger, like how old he was in the flashback, and then the older Lee Woo Jin too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that scene is.
I was blown away.
And the song is called "Cries and Whispers." I love that song too.
That's the title of a Ingmar Bergman film.
What? Guess you cares.
Maybe it's a reference.
Are you saying that Park Chan-wook is a Hollywood hack who ripped off Ingmar Bergman?
That's controversial. Oh my God. Can we put that
on?
on?
Mark, wow.
I haven't watched Cries and Whispers, but I know it's like a film about like women and their relationships. So I feel like when I watch Cries and Whispers eventually, I'm sure I'll pick up on some sort of connection there, or not. Who knows?
Yeah.
There was a reference. There was a reference in the film that I really appreciated. Was the whole story is about vengeance, and when his daughter Mido, right?
Mido,
yeah.
She's talking to the guy on the computer through the chat, which is Lee Woo Jin, I think, but he calls himself the Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
I've read the Count of Monte Cristo, and that's like held up as the greatest revenge story in all of literature, because it's about a guy who's wrongfully imprisoned, and when he gets out, he gets revenge on everybody who wronged him.
Yeah.
And I thought, when it was brought up in the film, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
You're like, oh my God. Well, that's
how fitting. How fitting.
Yeah, I'm kind of I think the first 45 minutes of this, from the opening to when the villain reveals himself in the car, are some of the best 45 minutes ever put to film. It's so masterfully edited. There's such a kind of a wonderful pace that conveys information intelligently to the audience, that it's just kind of like, it's non-stop engagement from the opening scene in the prison and the police station, where you learn a lot about him.
Well, the opening scene is him hanging that guy off the roof.
Well, yeah.
And then the hook is like, how did this super badass guy.
Yeah.
Like, how did he start off as like this lazy drunk?
Yeah, and that it's wonderful because that hook is answered 20 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
something that it's not an hour and a half later where you go, oh, here we are. It's you learn so much about him. It's that hook. He's drunk and belligerent in the police station. You learn about him and his relationship to his daughter and his friend. Boom, 15 minutes of him being locked up. 20 minutes in, you're back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And then you have an hour and 30 minutes left of where you're like, I don't know where this is going. You're like, we've established, and now the rest is unknown.
Yeah, and the editing in the flashbacks is so crisp too, because he's on the phone, and then the friend gets on the phone and talk to his wife.
Yeah.
And then he's gone. Cuts to the credits, and then you see him like then next time you see him is him like sticking his head out of the slot where he's getting the food. And you don't know what's going on.
Yep.
And then he gets the food, and then when he gets released, he's being hypnotized in the bed. So you see him laying on the bed, and then you see the grass. You're like, oh, he's outside now, so he's out of the hotel. So you think, oh, he's on the field. Oh no, he's on the roof of some building.
Yeah.
Like there's so many like brilliant like editing things that they do that make you like always subvert your expectations, but in a satisfying way, subvert your expectations.
Yeah.
And I just thought like some scenes like that were so interesting. So it's like constantly making you like rethink of what's going on.
Yeah.
There was a camera movement that I was very intrigued by the camera movements in this film, because I think when he's at the phone booth and he gets off the phone with his daughter, and then like he gives it to his friend, he steps out into the rain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His friend's like, oh, Ode Sue, it's your wife, and then he like goes out in the rain, and the camera's like it's like on the telephone booth, and then it goes up like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's like it becomes like this bird's eye view.
Yeah.
And then you see like the umbrellas, and I was like, well, this is interesting. That's interesting camera movement.
There's a lot of that in a movie in like Stoker, where Park Chan-wook kind of like has this free flowing kind of omniscient present camera, where things will kind of like, it feels like they're interrupting the sequence itself, but it's the camera's flowing through interactions. It's a really kind of unique style.
And also you see that with the flashback when he's following himself.
Yep.
Following Lee
oh
Jin
my God.
And his sister, and it's like you see like they're all like everyone's in that one scene that you see like him like following his own memories.
Yeah.
And they don't need to cut it all. It's so well done. But like you never like, oh, why is he in his own flashback? You always know that he's watching. Like you just know from how it's directed and how like everything was planned out that he's like literally, you're in his mind following his own footsteps, and it's so well done.
I feel like we should talk about, this is one of the best performances I've ever seen. And I don't think this gets talked enough as kind of like the great performances of cinema. There is so much that the actor Choi Min-sik, I'm going to butcher it because I'm not Korean. But this is just, there is so much.
You're not?
I'm not. What? There is so much he has to juggle in this movie. And I think you mentioned it, but that first opening where the camera's framed from the little hole, where he kind of peers out, and he juggles like anger, pleading, begging, and it's like acceptance and denial in like 2 minutes. Yeah. And it's just like you're just capturing on his face, and the camera's holding, and he just like it's this look of desperation and confusion and anger, and it's masterful. He is so perfect in this movie, and I feel like he holds this movie together a lot.
And it's funny because a lot of the scenes could come off as comical, like the overacting, like for Evans, the Josh Brolin one, but like the reveal of the incest scene later on, like that scene from a lesser actor could have just been like funny and unintentionally funny, but he's able to go through all this huge range of emotions so well and make it so convincing and so sympathetic from the audience that it's a true testament to how good he is as an actor.
Yeah.
It also happens in that later scene when he's sort of begging with the antagonist.
That is that was one of that. There are a few ever scenes that are just like you just watch, and I feel like time just passes immediately.
Yeah.
Like that entire sequence is like 7-8 minutes long, and I think I blinked and then it just that passed. I was like, what happened? Yeah, that is there's that transition from he's like, I'll be your dog, I'll be your bitch, and he starts barking and begging, and he's like,
he's like, if you tell Mito, I'll kill you. Yeah. I'm so sorry. Yeah. And he's like,
then it cuts off his tongue.
Yes.
There's that wonderful kind of like, we're talking about a lot of the camera movements, but that entire time you never see Woo Jin's reaction.
Yeah.
And then because you're just focused on the desperation, and then the camera does like what you said, Mark, that kind of like omnipresent bird's eye view where it pans up to Woo Jin, and he's just laughing he's like stifling laughter, and you're just like, this is the best. You're like, he is so cool, but this is like, he is just, it's like, it's ecstasy for him. And it's so perfectly conveyed. I don't know the actor's name, but he is amazing in this movie. He's like kind of like this mythological figure.
Yeah.
Like the villain.
Force of nature.
Yeah, this ever moving, like super rich. His house is really weird though. I just want to, can we talk about his house for a second?
Well, let's talk about his dope closet.
No, that's where he
or like his awesome shower that just like everything just automatically like unfolds in front of him.
Yeah.
Well, it's like one, that place looks terrible to live in. I'm just throwing that out there. It looks cold, and he has water in the floor of it. What if he trips and falls?
Though. He's so rich that he just.
But it's like, I don't know, because he just like walks and he's in the shower and you see his butt and his like little tramp stamp tattoo in the back. Where it's like the knife, and I'm like, what's happening?
I was watching, I was like, that's a tramp stamp.
Yeah, I was like, what's he into?
Yeah, specific. Just talking about the penthouse. Another sequence that blew my mind is when Odae-soo walks out of the elevator.
Yeah.
And it's like that montage of like him saying goodbye to Mi-do in like the prison, and then he's coming out the elevator, and then like the camera's like in the corner of the room in the prison, and it's focused on Odae-soo saying goodbye, and then the camera focuses on the toothbrush, and then it cuts back to the penthouse, and he snaps a toothbrush and he kills those dudes. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like the perfect gateway. Do you think this is the perfect gateway movie to South Korean cinema? I think it is. Because I think there are specific...
The ending's my only apprehension.
Because it's so kind of like, it's just like one thing after the other.
Yeah.
But this is like, I feel like there are a lot of like, this is a really interesting take on like introspective into like South Korean culture.
Yeah.
Kind of
I would say Parasite just because you get South Korean culture, but like everyone can relate to it.
But this was then the gateway for, let's say, because Parasite came out in 2019.
Yeah,
the movie came out in 2003. So for
Parasite, I would say probably this movie.
So for 16 years, this movie is kind of like the king. Right, and I guess you could argue in like 2016, Handmaiden is a better movie, which I do think it is. I think The Handmaiden's a better movie than this. But that's not saying much. But I feel like The Handmaiden is even less accessible.
Yeah.
Than Oldboy, which is really like, I don't know, because without spoiling much about Handmaiden, like, do you think this is probably the most famous South Korean movie of all time? Because I think it is.
Oldboy, yes, because this is the only South Korean movie I can think of that got a U.S. remake that was well known enough to get a U.S. remake.
Yeah.
So I would say, other than Parasite now, because since it won all the Oscars, I would say other than that, then Oldboy would probably be the most famous and probably the most accessible of the South Korean movies.
But it's also like, I feel like it's a really good like insight into kind of like what South Korean is as a genre. Like it's just kind of like, I feel like bombastic, kind of like character actor driven, where yes, it's like I don't know if I've seen like a South Korean movie where it doesn't feel like the actors are like a little bit over the top, but it's never like over the top in an unrealistic sense. Like you mentioned, in a lesser actor would kind of seem kind of really campy and over dramatic. I feel like it kind of like South Korean cinema perfectly balances that line between over dramatic and realistic.
Yeah, and they also have just more complex characters as well.
Yeah, I think better acting too.
And probably better acting as well, and just better cinematography. And I think that South Korean directors have more active cameras. Like I can't really think of any like shot reverse shot being used very much in South Korean movies.
There's this wonderful, I actually wanted to bring that up because it's a point that I'm slightly like a little bit lesser on, but it's also commending that. The final discussion between Woo Jin and Odae-soo, where it's framed while the camera's looking in through a mirror, and you're looking at Woo Jin's reflection talking to Odae-soo in the background, and it's and oftentimes it kind of takes like the Brian De Palma approach where you see a face up close and it's kind of like that split screen where you see an up close perspective and something else is happening. There is that. It's like it's really interesting. I don't know what you guys thought about that scene, because I think there's a little bit of weird editing in that as well. I think it's interesting, I should say.
It didn't stick out to me.
It didn't stick out?
Bad.
It didn't stick out too bad. I was like sort of like I was like when that shot first comes into play, I was like I suddenly became very aware of it.
Yeah.
But then like this, the story just pulls you right back in. It's like,
No.
oh, it's an interesting shot. And then you're like, wait, what happens next? I also want to point out there's a lot of handheld in this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys noticed that. I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a complaint. It's something I sort
Actually,
of became aware
one
of.
of the handheld scenes is one of my Hallmark scenes.
Yep.
So we want to get into that. I would say my favorite scene of the movie is a handheld scene, and it's when the young Odesu is spying on Lee Woo-jin and his sister when they when they go to that empty classroom. They're taking the pictures, and then shenanigans ensues.
Yep.
And first of all, if you like, but their handheld camera works because you're literally looking through the eyes of Odesu in that moment, and it just feels like you as the audience are like witnessing something you shouldn't be watching.
Yeah.
And like I knew about the scene, or like I've already seen the movie, but when I was watching that scene, like I'm pretty sure I wasn't even breathing because it like this is a testament both to the actors as well as the directing. Like it unfolds so slowly, and it's gonna happen, especially if you've already watched it like I have. But like you just in the back of your mind, you're just like, I shouldn't be watching this. Like this is obviously something really private, and it's so taboo from it's so like such a taboo thing to do as well that I was just like glued to my eyes were just glued to the screen during that scene because it was so methodical and so well done, so well acted as well. And you get that handheld style where if it was another director, if you just got a classic movie shot of it, it would not feel as realistic as it is how Park Chan-wook chose to film it. I don't know if you guys felt the same way.
I agree. I think the handheld use. I did enjoy that scene, but one of my favorite uses of a handheld camera in this movie is when the people who locked him up, that kind of complex, after he rips out the guy's teeth.
Yeah.
Great shot, by the way. I couldn't watch it when I was like 14, but now when you kind of like see the blood start to form through the hammer, and he's like licking the hammer, because that's what you do instinctually when something's in your mouth. Like you ever go to the dentist and they're like scraping and they're like, stop move your tongue, and you're like, I wanna.
Well, like what muscle you can he has to to fight back too.
Yeah.
So it's his last chance desperation.
It's wonderful. But there's that when they come back, and they're gonna torture him, and you see Mito kind of like tied up, and they're like beating him up, and the camera's like right in their face.
Yeah.
Again, and it just feels again very invasive. There's a really like wonderful like invasive feeling to this movie where everything feels is like taboo. Even kind of like the actions of all the characters and like the minute dialogue just feels like you're kind of like peering into something that shouldn't be seen. And I feel like that ties along to the kind of the nature of the story as a whole. And I do want to talk about the narrative later.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know about you, Thought Mark, but that was kind of my favorite when they're starting to like they attack him, and it's just basically like right in your face is the hand on the camera. I don't know what did you notice, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was parts in this movie when I got slower, I became more aware of the camera movements and the technical aspects of the film. But this movie is so gripping that I really wasn't paying attention to anything technical through like those intense scenes. But now that you point that out, I remember I did like that. Like it just like that shot in the mouth and then just all those close-ups.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I also this is like one of the few movies I've seen where like the antagonist wins. I mean, he wins, and in the end, he like gets what he wants, the revenge.
It's wonderful. It's amazing.
Yeah,
but even when he wins, he's still not satisfied.
Yeah,
which makes it better.
Yeah. It's like what happens like when you get your revenge. What next? I think he says that to Odesu
he's like that feeling comes back eventually. He says. It still persists.
I also this feels like a very it's a realistic movie. I'm specifically talking about like the hallway fight scene.
Yeah.
That was like fantastically choreographed.
Can we talk about that fight scene? Because it does the best thing ever, which most movies don't do, is because it knows what's going to do beforehand. It's going to peer back, and you're going to see that test of will in him fight. But it does one of my favorite things in the movie, where it has that one establishing shot where it shows how small the hallway is. And you see it's only can fit like 2 people wide. So when you cut and like they're all stumbling on each other and they're like frantic and they're throwing stuff, you're like, this is such a confined space. I don't know what you guys thought. It's one of the most famous movie scenes of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone knows about it.
What I appreciated about the scene the most was John Wick has started this trend of showing actual action scenes happen.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, the scenes feel like overly choreographed. Like I like John Wick 3. I'm not really a big fan of the first 2 because I feel like John Wick 3 finally becomes fun. And then, but like then movies like The Old Guard and Extraction try to do like these long takes, and they feel comical because they just don't feel real. I think what makes this scene feel real, because it is a long take, is the fact that people are, hurt,
Yep.
and like Odesu gets destroyed because he gets cornered, he gets like surrounded and just beat the crap out of him, and then he plays dead for a second. And they think it's over, and he grabs his hammer and starts just nailing at their feet, and it's brilliant. And then you see over time, like, because we said about this about Li Wu Jin being like a mythological figure. I feel like this whole movie is kind of mythological in a way, because it's sort of like Oedipus Rex in a way, where the he has a certain he has like a very incest. He's gonna find out about the incest one way or another, and these goons aren't going to stop him. Like he's winning this fight because his destiny's been written in a way. So he's a mythological figure in itself. And then you see like as the fight goes on, like the guys are like looking back to them like, I don't want to fight this guy. Like he literally.
Yeah. So, a couple of them stay down too. They only get punched once, and they're like, "Oh no, I'm done."
Yeah, it's so good. And that's why I think movies like The Old Guard and Extraction fail at, is like having people feel pain. And that's you can show as much of the action as you want, but if people aren't like reacting to the action, then it still doesn't feel real.
I want to play quick devil's advocate for that. I do like the John Wick movies. I love their style, but it's also a different kind of universe where in Oldboy, they're just kind of dudes. In John Wick, they're all like assassins, like trained fighters. So it's going to feel a little more like they know what they're doing. But Oldboy, one of my favorite parts is when they're stumbling back and they're just throwing stuff at him. Or they like swing. Like there's a few, like that one big guy at the end where he kind of like stumbles and they swing and they miss. And then it's just like, because when you fight, it's pure adrenaline, but eventually the adrenaline stops and you are so exhausted. And you can see that in the guys where they're like, this dude has a hammer. We stabbed him in the back. We beat him. And yet he's still going. I'm like, I'm done. Yeah. I'm exhausted.
And also the music is brilliant in that scene. It's like it's like this sort of like low kind of jazz music. So like it's not like telling you like, oh, this is so badass. Like it's not dun, 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 like generic like rock music. It's like it's very somber, and it fits like this tone of like this is not like an awesome character doing awesome things. This is like this is just really tragic and sad, and he shouldn't be doing this. And like the song is called The Oldboy, and I listen to that song all the time because I love soundtracks to any Park Chan-wook movie. I want to talk more about the composer later because I want to focus on the scene more now. But and then the lighting too is like really dark and like has some green lights. It just feels so somber, and it fits like this jazzy kind of tone the music's going for. It's so good. It makes that also, I think, elevates the scene to how like unique and beloved it is, and like for film lovers today.
Mark, did you know about, like, I'm really, because again, I saw this movie when I was like 13, 14. This movie has been in my life for 8-9 years now. What did you like? Did you know about this one take hallway scene? Like anything about it?
I just knew like there's a hallway scene. That's all I knew. Also, a quick point I want to mention. Whenever there was the tooth ripping scenes, or like there was like the first tooth ripping scene, and then like the implications of a tooth ripping scene later on, there was like classical music playing.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I love it.
As like they're pulling the tooth out. Love it.
Yeah. I also, have you guys seen the Spike Lee remake?
Yes.
I've seen the YMS review like a bunch of times. So
I've seen.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So there's the hallway fight scene, right?
Yeah. It's terrible.
And then at the
terrible.
And then in the end, when the elevator opens up and there's more guys, do they show that action, or do they like show Josh Brolin stepping out? Okay.
Yeah, it's almost like, well, if you think about it, okay, in the 2013 Spike Lee Oldboy remake, when he gets stabbed in the back, in that movie, it feels like a comical like allusion to the 2003 one, because in the 2003 one, it feels like a natural flowing event. Someone happened, he exposed his back and someone stabbed him, and then he goes down. And then he plays possum. But in this one, in the 2013 one, Josh Brolin beats them all up, and then some guy runs out of nowhere, stabs in the back, and then runs away. And you're like, what the fuck? And then he's like, oh, and then rips it out in like the same way. And then the elevator doors open. It's just like, it's really like, it loses the point of what the 2003 is trying to tell.
Because it's trying to tell you that it's awesome. Like it's trying to, it's filmed like in like, this is so cool kind of way.
Yeah.
And I think that's what takes it away.
When I was watching this and like the elevator door opens up, I was like, oh shit, here goes more fighting. And then it cuts to him like walking out and all the bodies fall out.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, but that makes so much more sense because we just saw a bunch of fighting. We don't need to see it again.
We got the point.
But like when the elevator opens and they have the shot of Odesu's face and like all the guards
Yeah.
are down.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and the elevator opens, and as you hear like the digging sound, like a trickle of blood just
Yeah.
falls down his neck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, I
yeah.
love it. I love it.
I was watching that and I was like, if this was like an American movie, like they would have shown that action again. You know,
Yep.
you get
Yeah.
the same scene twice. But I guess they didn't do it in the remake. But
no, they just in
um,
that fight they just lost all sense of what made the movie and scene
Yeah.
great. It's kind of
Yeah,
terrible.
right.
That's one of like the worst and like out of touch movies I've ever seen
Yeah.
because it completely doesn't understand what makes the first 2003 movie great. I love Spike Lee as a director, and that one is just like a shit show of a movie. That's
I wonder why he
terrible.
picked it.
Money
Why did he
to fund it.
I guess.
Like he couldn't fund like Spike Lee's one of the most famous directors of all time, yet he couldn't find the funding for Da 5 Bloods. Like if Netflix
Yeah.
didn't pick up Da 5 Bloods, the movie wouldn't have been made. If
Mhm.
that kind of gives an indication. So he probably went, all right, I'll make the Oldboy remake, and then I guess and then that'll give me the money to kind of like a one you do one I do one kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So that is arguably one of those famous scenes of all time. It's not my favorite scene in the movie though.
Oh yeah, what's your Hallmark scene?
My Hallmark scene, I have a two-way tie, and they both have Woo Jin in it. The one is at the end where Odesu's like begging. He's like, "I'll be your bitch, I'll be your dog," and then he's like, "Arf, arf," and then like licks the shoe, and then looks up and he's just laughing. Oh,
Yeah.
that was like an awe. And then there's another one where after Odesu and Mito have sex, and then Woo Jin walks in with the gas thing and like puts the mask on, and he just kind of like looks at them, and
Oh,
it's just
yeah.
in like glee. He's in ecstasy, and he like lies down. And he's just like savoring the moment. He's like touching
Yeah.
her body, and you're just
Yeah.
like, you're like, this is like something else. And then it cuts back to the guy who's watching and always listening and always there, and he's just kind of watching this happen.
And
And
he
it
turns
feel-
away.
Yeah, wait, does
yeah.
he?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's looking, and then he just goes like that, like he can't watch it anymore.
Okay.
Like he's creeped out by it. Yeah.
But that ties into arguably, so that's basically my two favorite scenes of the movie are those two, because it ties into some of my favorite parts of the movie, which I already mentioned, which was the invasive feeling of everything that happens in this movie. I don't feel like I should be watching. I feel like I'm kind of like an outside intruder to
Yeah.
what's happening to
Yeah.
these events. And those scenes where you're viewing it from his perspective, where he's just like reveling in his victory. I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. It's so exhilarating to me as
Mm.
as kind of watching this. That's what I love in movies. Is that?
Yeah.
I don't know, Mark. What are your favorite scenes of the movie? Matt, you already mentioned yours.
I mean, I kind of already mentioned my favorite one, but I'll expand upon it. Well, it's the scene leading up to the elevator scene where it's like the flashback of him younger and like the sister's like, let me go. And then the shot of his hand going like this.
Yep.
But right before that, when he throws like the heart monitor on the ground.
Yep.
And to Odesu, and then he picks it up, and then he's like he's like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he presses it, and then Woo Jin stops, and then like the audio from the sex tape starts playing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, my God,
Yeah.
this is like sickening.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
And then you get that amazing elevator scene, and then the doors open up, and you see him blow his brains out. And I was like,
Yeah.
like this is like I think this film should be held up as like the crowning achievement of like show don't tell and editing, because
Yeah.
it's just a master class in both those.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
I think the more I'm talking about it now, the more I'm liking the movie, because I was sort of
Did you have any Mark sleepy time scenes?
Yeah. Okay. So we should
I was
explain. We should explain for people who haven't know. Mark likes to fall asleep in movies and then rate them good grades. So we had a section called Low Points, which we're now renaming to Mark's Sleepy Time. Mark, what was your sleepy time moment?
If you had any.
If you had any, because this is also.
And I didn't have any in this movie. There were some periods that were slow, but it was slow.
Cat nap.
It was slow in the context of a very fast-paced movie. So in reality, they're not really that slow. So Mark had no sleepy moments.
Wow.
I had a sleepy moment.
You had a sleepy moment? What
I
is
had
a
a sleep-
sleepy moment?
It's when it's the end of the hallway fight when the elevator doors open. I think it's so comical and not great because it's like because you see all these guys and then the scene cuts and all their bodies fall out, and it feels like it just kind of feels like, well, wouldn't they get out? Like, don't they charge it? And how do you get all the elevator people back? Like, are they all standing up when they're knocked out? It raises too many questions. It takes me out of the movie for a second.
Yeah. It's like
but
the one
still,
time where part where Odesu was cool.
Yeah, and I
and it
didn't
doesn't
want
really
that.
work. Yeah.
So, but the thing, it's still like well done, and it's still an excellent kind of use of editing and directing. But I think it's a little bit too over the top because
Mhm.
they aren't wounded. They look like he walked in the elevator, stood behind them, and then they all passed out.
Mm.
Yeah.
As cool as that is, I also
Tyler
it's like
wanted Tyler wanted a Shining-esque elevator, just pool of blood
I
flying,
wanted
falling
body
down,
parts.
and then Odesu just walks out of it.
Maybe.
Oh,
Um,
I just remember. Oh, sorry. Continue.
I was gonna say,
Tyler.
Matt, what's your sleepy time, and then Mark.
Mark, you want to just make your point, then I'll talk about my sleepy time scene.
There was also one specific scene that I really enjoyed is when Odesu goes back into like the prison, the Blue Dragon thing,
Yep.
and he has the hammer. He's like this, and he's just staring at the guy in the hallway, and like that
Yeah.
red dot starts going to
Yeah,
his
yeah.
forehead, and the guy's like trying to get his knife out of his boot and just shaking. I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is awesome.
No, that scene's great.
Yeah,
I don't know if
yeah.
I have a sleepy time scene, but I was just confused by.
I love this name.
Yeah, it's great. I was just confused by when Mita was talking about her backstory, and she's in the subway. And maybe it's missed dialogue that explains it, but then there's like a giant CGI ant there, and I just couldn't understand like what the point of it was.
She says, because in the hotel room, because I was confused about this too, so I went and rewatched it. In the
Yeah.
hotel room, he envisions an ant coming out of his skin, and then he's covered in ants. And then she says, the loneliest people envision ants.
Yeah.
And then it's supposed to convey, but it's weird because it's a
I knew
giant.
about the ants coming out of his skin. I just didn't understand like the thematic reason for ants.
I think it's supposed to be like representative of how lonely she is. While Odesu is kind of like driven insane by his loneliness, the constant infestation of the ants, representation of loneliness. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but hers is it's singular and it's giant, which could
Yeah.
be kind of like the loneliness of losing her parents,
Mm.
or kind of like being alone in life. And it's so grand that it's just one. That's all. I had to rewatch the scene a few times to figure it out. So
I always like interpreted this ants from Odesu's perspective as just him going through withdrawals from being an alcoholic and not having any. But I guess that's for I guess if they say ants mean loneliness, then I guess I just missed that dialogue.
By the time of the ants, though, it's about a year in the hotel.
True.
It's a year in the room. So, because the first time we see him, because withdrawals are typically like, the first time we see him, it's 2 months in. And I feel like the withdrawals would already have. Are you getting arrested? Is somebody? I heard the sirens.
No, a cop car just went down the
Okay.
street.
Yeah. Matt, you want to talk
You
about
got
the
to put
composer?
lockers too many times. Come out with your laptop in the air.
I'm sorry. Matt, what did you want to talk about with the composer and the music?
Oh yes. So the composer's name is I'm just gonna butcher it.
Let's do it.
Ying Wang Zhou.
I'm proud of
And
you.
he has composed the soundtrack to every single Park Chan-wook movie except Stoker, I think. So he's done Handmaided, Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, Thirst, which I haven't seen. He did Joint Security Air, Oldboy. This man is the greatest music composer for a film I think ever.
Oh my God! Wow.
Like
Wow.
honestly, I listened to I've listened to the Oldboy soundtrack 1,000 times. I've listened to the Handmaiden soundtrack 1,000 times. I've listened to Lady Vengeance soundtrack a couple of times. I'll probably be listening to the Joint Security Area soundtrack more because I just watched it 2 nights ago for the first time. The music in Oldboy is brilliant. It is the second best part of the movie, other than like the editing and directing.
Damn. Really?
I don't know if did you guys love the music in this movie? Like, I don't know, maybe you should listen to it like on your own, like separately. The music in this movie, I think, is phenomenal. I think this composer is just a genius. I think also in The Handmaiden as well, the music in that movie is phenomenal, legitimately phenomenal. And I wonder if you guys, did the music stick out to you guys at all, or when you're watching?
Well, yeah, for me, in the tooth pulling scenes when the classical music starts playing, I absolutely love it when classical music is used in a film like correctly. I guess like it's used in A Clockwork Orange. It's used in Silence of the Lambs. It's used in the end of Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
It's great in Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
It's so good in Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Like,
when the music cues, like so when it was playing in the tooth pulling scenes, I was like, oh, I love this. This is great. So that's where I was most aware of the music in those scenes. I think like when I was watching, I'll have to go back and watch the hallway fight scene because you were mentioning the jazz music. I wasn't like, I was so engrossed with what's going on that I wasn't paying attention to the music. So this is definitely a movie I'll have to see several more times before I can like fully appreciate what all the things that are going on.
Yeah,
Because like the song "The Last Waltz," which is Mito's theme, it's a song that plays at the end of the movie, like right at the end where he's hugging, and then like the kind of like flute music starts playing. Like
Yeah.
that is Odesu's ringtone throughout the movie as well.
Oh, really?
It's like an
Okay.
8-bit version. It's like the 8-bit version of the
Yeah.
song. So I
Oh,
noticed
that's
that
cool.
on rewatching. It's like, oh my, cause I was like, 'cause that song is great. I love that song so much.
Yeah, yeah.
And "Cries and Whispers," which is the song that plays during like the last scene with Lee Woo-jin where he's like having the flashback and shoots himself. But
Yeah.
that scene's
Yeah.
played as like a slow piano version during like the scene where he where him and his sister get it on. Like it's played like a very slow piano version of the same song.
Yep.
It's so like the
Mm.
music in this movie is brilliant. And I don't know, Tyler, did this stick out to you at all?
Well,
Or even in The Handmaiden as well, or in Thirst? Because I haven't seen Thirst. Did the soundtrack stick out in Thirst?
yeah. I've. It's kind of gonna sound like me. I'm reiterating a lot of my points, but the music I feel like elevates the kind of style of the movie that it's in. I
Yeah.
don't think it's my second favorite part of the movie, but the music often feels as though it kind of fits the grandiose style of the movie. This kind of like mythological quest, where it just kind of like it feels grand and it feels kind of expansive, and it feels like you're listening to something that is directly and tonally related to the style of the movie that's going. And for that, I think the music is really good. I don't think I'll have to individually listen to the music, but I'm kind of in the same boat as Mark, where a lot of it, like, I'm more like engrossed in like the performances or the style of the directing, and then those kind of draw me in, and then the music kind of adds to it without me directly noticing the music. But I can understand probably why you like it from what I remember. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. Again, like this guy, I just think is a brilliant composer. I think when I first watched like The Handmaiden and those movies, like Park Chan-wook movies, like it didn't really stick out to me as well. But like I went on my own and listened to a couple songs. Like wow, these songs are really good. I just a couple things more by this composer.
Yep.
And I think that you guys, I can just text you like which songs I like specifically. You can
Mhm.
listen to
Yeah.
because
I'd be down.
they're so good, and I think it elevates the movie. Upon rewatching it, it just elevates the movie so much more for me because you see like the thematic, the themes of the movie coming back with like the songs that are appropriate for that theme, and it's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah, I completely agree. There are
Yeah.
a few other things. I feel like we've been dancing around the narrative a little bit.
Yeah, you said you want to talk about narrative, so
Yeah, this is probably one of the more interesting narrative stories I've ever seen in a movie. It is, and I think it's purely because I don't think this is a perfect movie. I should specify that I think I'm a little bit in agreement with Mark that after the first 45 minutes, where he kind of reveals himself, Woojin reveals himself, and then it's that little discovery where it's like evergreen and it's kind of like figuring out who he is, where I find the movie takes a little bit of a step back and it's as less interesting. So there's maybe like 20-25 minutes in this that are not as engaging for me, but then we get the revelation and kind of that discovering who he is, and then Woojin murders his best friend for calling his sister like a whore and a slut, and like stabs him with a broken CD, and he's like, you removed my bug and I came to your eavesdrop, and now your friend's dead because of you. And he like starts to walk away, and you hear like Odesu in the phone being like, "I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna fucking kill you." And
Oh,
it's like,
yeah.
you're like, "This is great." And then the ending is kind of like, it's just piling upon piling upon piling to the point where he presses the thing to stop the pacemaker, and it's like the sex tape, it's the noises, and the camera pans back, and it's the one kind of like few stagnant shots in the movie where you just see like Odesu in like agony on the ground, like wanting it to end.
Yeah.
This is like, besides I think like 25 minutes of the middle movie where it's kind of like that investigation, or it feels less character driven and kind of more mystery driven, I think this is like a wonderfully written movie. I think even after seeing it for my third time, the reveals and the what happens in it are still kind of like surprising to me, even though I know what's going to happen. It's still like, oh, like what's gonna happen? Oh, and the pacemaker. Oh, and it's a sex. You're like, oh my god. You're like, it keeps. I don't know what you guys thought, because maybe like Mark, because this is again first time seeing this movie. What do you think of kind of like the constant piling and the themes of vengeance in the narrative and kind of everything?
Yeah, it's like I was definitely like I stopped blinking. My breaths were very shallow. Like I was like, oh my god, what is going on? This is a lot. And and then you get that I think like you get that small intermittent period where it's like after you press the pacemaker, it's like kind of slow. He's like Woojin is walking to the elevator and you just hear the noise playing, and then he's in the elevator, and then like the camera's framed so that Woojin's like in the bottom left corner, which I thought was very interesting, and he's just standing there, and then he says like, I can't remember what he says to Odesu, but he's like, you know, I loved my sister. Can you do the same or something
Yeah,
like
I
that?
love my
Yeah.
sister despite everything. Can you do the
Yeah.
same, basically?
Yeah. And then you get that, and then you get like that small period to like sort of collect yourself a little bit, and you're like, holy shit. And then you get that sequence of him killing himself. What did you ask me again? I sort
basically
of got reminiscing the movie a bit. Like I
what-
kind of got lost.
Because Matt and I have known about this movie for so long, and you
Yeah.
have known about it in some essence. Like, what do you think about kind of like the revelations and the constant piling
right.
and
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
just like the script as a whole? Because I feel like it's again, besides those 20-25 minutes, I mean, there's still an hour and a half of a movie left that's like very
Mhm.
like finely written and tuned and everything, and
Mhm.
it's this constant idea is like vengeance, and it's how it kind of reminds me of I Saw the Devil. Definitely takes inspiration from this, where it's like it blurs the line between kind of like hero and protagonist, stuff like
Yeah.
that. I don't know.
I
Mark,
have a
Matt,
quote
you have a
from
quote.
Park Chan-wook on vengeance. I'm glad you brought up this point.
Yes,
I'm
I
gonna
knew
read
that.
it right
What's
now.
his philosophy?
Let me find it. Vengeance is a device which he says what he says in an interview. Vengeance is a device which dares to make us think what is to be a human. And to think about this human existence, vengeance is meaningless. Revenge is about something that has already happened, and when you are trying to achieve vengeance, you are investing your everything into a venture that will lead you to no benefits in the end. And it relates this to both his protagonist wanting vengeance and says, I want to like go on this foolish journey for vengeance. It says the audience is just as foolish as the protagonist because typically an audience wants to see the protagonist get their revenge, and he says that the whole point of the movie is to show the audience and the protagonist at the end that vengeance is ultimately pointless.
Yep.
So do you guys think that thematically fits with Oldboy? I think this would be a good quote to read at the end of Vengeance trilogy as well to see if it all fits thematically. But for Oldboy specifically, do you think that this quote fits the movie?
100%.
Yeah.
And I feel like I just mentioned it, but the movie I Saw the Devil,
Yeah.
which is one of my favorite South Korean movies, because the line between the antagonist and protagonist are so blurred that to the end you're not really you don't relate to the protagonist anymore, and that the idea of vengeance has consumed to the point where this noble and heroic protagonist we have at the beginning is as bad as the antagonist we had, where I don't want to spoil I Saw the Devil because it has one of my favorite endings in a movie ever.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so and it's just like you're just like, oh my god. Matt knows what I'm
I saw
talking
the movie
about.
like 10 years ago, and I still remember it like
Oh
perfectly
my
clear.
Jesus, you're so little. No wonder why you're so messed up.
Yeah, I know. It's like 8 years ago.
Yeah,
That's not much better.
but in terms of like this movie, I want to talk about the villain as a whole, because there's this definite like they're both on a path of vengeance. There's a lot of parallels in this movie. Oftentimes, Woo Jin's sister, I don't know if you guys noticed, but him and her and Mito are kind of wearing the same clothes a lot of the time, like the same color clothes. They kind of go through the same journey, and then the villain and the protagonist are the same kind of like parallel track for vengeance. It's a very like interesting movie of parallels, with ultimately leaving them both in a worse state than they started. Arguably, even after being in prison for 15 years, Woojin ends up dead,
Yeah.
and Odesu Lee in the ending is up in the air of whether or not he forgot if Mito was his daughter or not, because he has that smile, and it's unclear if he just is accepting it or if he forgets, and it leaves everyone in a state worse than when they started. No,
Yeah.
people have growth, but not necessarily.
And it's interesting because vengeance, like no one ever gets rewarded for their vengeance. So you have Odesu trying to achieve revenge on Lee Woo-jin for capturing for 15 years, and then obviously the revelation happens where he tricked him into having sex with his daughter.
Yeah.
And then after that, you think, oh, he probably learned his way. No, because he leaves the thing on the ground and he clicks it, trying to get one last desperate act of revenge to kill Lee Woo-jin, and he listens to the sounds of him having sex with his daughter. And then you think, oh, Lee Woo-jin's had this elaborate scheme that finally paid off, and he got exactly what he wanted. Literally 30 seconds later, he kills himself because he's nothing else to live for.
Yeah.
So like
He's
literally
accomplished his mission. Yeah.
What?
He's accomplished his mission, and then there's that. That's it.
And it went perfectly, and still nothing. Literally 30 seconds later, he does nothing. He kills himself.
Yeah.
There's so many like really great quotes, like when Odesu like flips to the final page of him with his daughter, and then on the other, and then like written below it is laugh and the world laughs with you, weep and you weep alone.
Yeah.
It's so brilliant. That's such a great line. And then earlier on, when he realizes, when he's like walking after he beats up everyone, and he's walking the streets like all haggard, he's like, even though he's like, vengeance has consumed me, blah blah blah. Even though I'm no better than the beast, don't I still have the right to live?
Yeah.
And then when he writes the quote, when he writes the letter to the psychic, the hypnotist, trying to get hypnotized, he writes the same line at the end.
Well, the person at the beginning who's going to commit suicide says that too. He's like, even though I'm no worse than a beast, don't I have the right to live? Which is a great scene, because as soon as he walks around, you see and then the person falls with a very clear stuffed dog.
The dog the dog does not look real.
It does not look real at all. There's some like arguably like wonderfully classic lines, like in the way laugh and the world laughs with you, weep and you weep alone. That shot's framed, so it's kind of like it's Odesu by himself, just staring, looking down, kind of like contemplating. It's wonderful. I do have a question though, and because I was not unsure about this, because there's this weird like disassociation with Woojin, where he seems to have absolved himself of any faults for his sister's death. I think.
Well, at least he says he does.
Well, he says he does, and there's the whole thing where he goes like, she is a phantom pregnancy. She got big. She like lost her period, and then she killed herself because of all of it. I wonder if Woojin actually got his sister pregnant, caused her death, and then...
I think that's the implication, yeah.
Is that the implication? Or I thought it was like a little ambiguous. I could have just missed that a little bit. I don't know what you guys thought.
Well, I mean, I think he's just crazy, and I think that he's just trying to deny his own responsibility, and then at the end, when he gets his revenge, he can't deny it anymore.
Yep.
And that leads him to kill himself. That's how I interpreted it, at least. I don't know.
That makes sense.
Something else. I don't for a second believe it was a phantom pregnancy, though.
Okay, yeah. That was kind of my thing, too. I was like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It kind of feels like, it feels in line for it to be real and him be the cause of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, do you guys have any other finding points before we get to the guessing game?
No.
Let's just let you do your little thing.
Yes! This is also one of our longest episodes, too.
This is a long
one. This is great. All right. The guessing game is when I put in maybe about 15 seconds of research to find some quotes to try to trick you guys, in hopes of, getting my one up, because I don't get them often. So, all right. So the actor Cho Min-sik improvises 2 scenes in this movie. What are they?
The last scene, the scene where he deals with where he gets the incest revelation, and
Did Matt look it up?
I think when he ate the squid. I don't know.
Okay, Mark, what are your 2 guesses?
I'd probably say the first one that Matt just mentioned. And was it when he's cleaning outside the door?
No.
When he's sticking his head. Okay.
It's Matt got that one right. The penthouse scene is all improvised, or for the most part improvised, and then the police station scene at the beginning, where he's like flailing around. He's like, "Don't touch me! Don't you fucking touch me!"
Oh,
like
right,
kicking in the air.
That makes sense.
That was also the final scene they filmed. I thought that was kind of interesting.
That makes sense, because he had to put all that weight on, so he probably...
That makes a lot of sense now, yeah.
Odesu is a reference to
what? Imagine that ripped for the movie, then like now you got to put on like 30 pounds.
He's like,
yeah.
My abs.
Yeah.
Odesu is a reference to what Greek tragedy? Come on, guys.
Is it not Oedipus?
It is Oedipus, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I talked about Oedipus before.
You talked about yeah.
Shit, I wasn't paying attention. What was the box office for this movie and what was the budget?
3 million, 15 million.
For what?
Oh,
it cost 3 million, maybe 15 million.
5 and 30.
Matt absolutely looked this up, you bastard. Matt got that dead on right, because you looked it up, because if you Google Oldboy box office, it says that exact same thing.
Yeah.
You bastard.
Did you look that up? Did you know he was going to ask that?
Matt knew I was going to ask
he asked it every time.
Yeah, but it's the fun of it. You guess the number, and then I go, you were wrong.
But it's more fun for me to deprive you of your one moment of power.
God damn it. How many live octopus were eaten for this movie?
Oh, God.
3.
5.
4.
Oh,
Yes,
damn
split
it.
it. You guys, yeah. By the way, that apparently caused some uproar or a little controversy in Korea, because they're not supposed to be, you're supposed to like cut them up.
Yeah.
But the fact that he like, and you can like see it fighting back is really cool. That was tough to watch when I was like 13, 14, but now I'm like, he's eating the octopus.
I'd be terrified to eat one of those in real life.
All right. The Guardian, the UK news source, ranked the best and most influential South Korean movies. Oldboy was ranked number what? What do you think Oldboy was ranked?
What year would this come out?
Came out in 2020 in February.
Oh, 2.
Mark?
I'd probably place it as 2 as well.
It was ranked number 3. What was number 1 and number 2? Or
Parasite.
Number 1.
1 was Parasite. 2 was The Handmaiden.
Mark?
Is
I'm right. I know, right?
No, you aren't. No,
Oh,
you're actually not.
Is Wong Kar-wai South Korean? Do you know that filmmaker?
No.
Okay, then that answers my question. Okay, would I know this film?
Yeah, you know both of them.
Memories of Murder.
No, okay.
Oh.
Ranked number 2 was Parasite. Number 1 was The Handmaiden. Handmaiden.
Oh,
That's what I said.
You said number 2 was Parasite. No, you said
I
number
got
2
the
was
2
The
movies
Handmaiden.
right. You made it sound like I didn't get anything right at all. You
Yeah, because I
idiot.
didn't want the satisfaction.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Because I was smiling, you're like, you got it right. I don't want you to have the satisfaction.
I literally got all of his questions right in this game.
Because you looked them up.
No, I only looked at the box office one.
How many was that? That was 5. All right, yeah, that was the guessing game. That was the worst one yet because
That was the best
sucked.
one. Yeah, that was hilarious.
God damn. All right, grades. Just in case this is your first time watching, we grade stuff on an A, B, C, D, F. We don't do plus or minuses because I don't know why, honestly. But A, B, C, D, F is kind of just fun. It's a little bit different. Mark, what would you give 2003's Oldboy?
Well, let's play a guessing game. What do you guys think?
This is
Yeah. Wait, Tyler, no, I'm the one with the guessing
wait,
game.
bullshit.
I'll say Mark gives it a B.
I say you give it a B.
I give it an A.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, I give it an A.
Well, we're gonna.
I give it a low. I give it a low A.
We're gonna have to
Yeah.
have the discussion then for the Hall of Fame. Matt, what do you give Oldboy? Shut up. Just give it an A.
It's an A, yeah.
Yeah. I'm also gonna give this movie an A.
It's so hard to get into our Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I know.
Like every movie we talk about makes.
I can't wait.
Don't worry, guys. I'll pick a movie that you'll hate.
Does this belong in our Film Frauds Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mark,
Yeah,
you
it
think
does.
so, even though it's a low A?
I mean,
This is like the top tier. Like,
there's certain aspects that I wasn't fond of the film. I probably.
but does that classify it?
Tyler, Mark says it classifies as an A as for the
I want to have a
Hall of
discussion.
Fame. Well,
Well,
your discussion is just you pointlessly interrogating Mark as he stumbles his way to a conclusion.
I'm trying to explain myself. I would
Damn,
say it's even though it's a low A for me, I recognize the fact that how influential and creative this film is, and how it's just like a masterpiece on like almost every technical level. So I think it absolutely deserves a place in the Hall of Fame.
Out of spite, I'm not putting it in the Hall of Fame.
I'm putting it on, so you're 2 out of 3 votes, so you lose.
Oh, what? No, that's not how it works.
Democracy.
Yeah,
No, that's not how it
democracy.
works. We all
Yeah,
have to
it
agree.
is.
Okay, fine. I agree. It's all going to the Hall of Fame. I
That
don't
was
want to be.
not-
I don't
that
want
was
to be
ten.
outvoted. I want to be a part. I don't want to be the one singular. That was our Oldboy discussion. Are we still doing what we've been watching?
I haven't really been watching much, so we can.
Cause-
do
I
it.
watched Oldboy yesterday.
If you
I've
want
been
to check,
failing my dues since Calvary. I haven't really watched much.
if you want to check out what we've been watching, look at our July 2020 recommendations video because that's kind of
Well,
like.
I watched like 2 movies I can talk about.
All right, talk about them then. My God, I watched
Okay.
one.
You only watched 1 movie, Tyler?
No, I watched like 4 or 5, but only one
All
to
right,
talk
I
about.
watched Joint Security
Yeah.
Area by Park Chan-wook, and it was really good. I think if you like Park Chan-wook, you'll like the movie a lot. I just don't want to talk about the plot at all because there are revelations you learn earlier on that really change the story, and I think that you should watch it and go in as blind as possible. And I watched Barking Dogs Never Bite.
Barking
Barking
Dogs.
Dogs Never Bite. My
Like
inner
Wild Bugs.
Bostonian accent's coming out. And it's the worst Bong Joon-ho movie. I've now seen all of his movies. It's like a solid C. Like it's all right in my opinion, but not anywhere near his best work.
I watched Avengers: Infinity War.
Boo.
Hack, fraud.
You like your roller coaster rides?
Shut up.
Go to Smojno, loser.
Shut up.
It's on Collider. Get your paycheck from Disney.
I don't
Like
want to talk about
Comic-Con,
it now.
idiot.
I don't want to talk about it now. It's good. It's like one of those movies that's really hard to like pinpoint what exactly they could do better because I don't think they can. It's not a
There's so many
perfect
things
movie.
you're dealing with.
Yeah, you're dealing with like 15 years or however many of movies. But it has like a really nice sense of dread like constantly persisting throughout. And it's like actually like you can kind of feel there's a little bit of stakes to the actions. Thanos and his like spiritual journey is always like great. The fact that there are like scenes where it's just him, like just like contemplating his actions are like wonderful. And I feel like they're really necessary. There's like legitimately great action scenes in this movie. And it's like it kind of kicks Endgame's ass in terms of like a movie.
Yeah.
It's so much better than Endgame.
I miss when Mark was like the biggest Marvel fanboy, and then he didn't want to watch any clips for Endgame, and we got him to watch like one TV spot, and it had Rocket Raccoon on his shoulder with War Machine shooting guns, and Mark was like, "Why did you guys make me watch that?
Like,
it spoiled the whole movie."
I forgot about that.
Well, because for Infinity War, I was like obsessive over the trailers, and there's one trailer that came out for Infinity War, and if you watch it like on an iPhone, it shows more of the picture than if you watch it on, a computer. Well, because there was a big
spoiler, both side by side.
There's a big spoiler in it, and I was like, was I supposed to see this? And the shot that I saw in the trailer before the movie ever came out was Thanos entering Wakanda, and you can see the gauntlet, and he's got every single one except for the Mind Stone. And I was like, no, I know how the movie's gonna work.
I like Mark just in his room.
God damn you!
No!
Damn you all! I
was like, come on, what are you doing, man?
Come on, do it!
Come on! All right, yeah, that's what I watched. I watched also Stoker and Thirst, and Stoker is a very like Hollywoodized.
Is that a biopic of Bram Stoker?
I hate you so much. No, that's so dumb.
Biopic of your mom.
Yeah. No, it's Park Chan-wook's like American movie, and it's like average. It has a lot of narrative issues. Technically, it's amazing. Like on a technical level, it's wonderful, but it feels very tame in comparison and very lackluster. And I feel like I'm attributing that to kind of like Hollywood interference. Like, we can't do that. Well, you can't do that. There's a scene where like the girl like masturbates to a dude getting murdered, and the dude who gets murdered is the guy who plays Han Solo. He gets his neck snapped.
Nice.
He tries to rape the girl, and then he gets his neck snapped, and then she masturbates to it, and you're like, all right, but it still feels like very tame compared to like Oldboy or Thirst. I also watched Thirst. I don't want to talk about it too much because I feel like we're eventually going to talk about that for the Park Chan-wook director series when we go like round 2 with him. So I kind of want to save that. So yeah, Matt, what's our call to action?
Like, comment, and subscribe. Comment if you have film fraud, as long as it's me. And next episode, if we're not doing a real movie that's coming out, which I don't think we are, we're gonna do Mark's recommendation. Mark, what are you recommending for us to watch?
Well, I was gonna recommend The Third Man. I was gonna recommend The Third Man, but I was met with some some mean comments. So I've changed it to Ari Aster.
Can you insert our reactions in this clip?
I'm gonna try. I'll do a separate video. Our reactions to The Third Man. It's gonna be us.
Okay.
I'm gonna recommend Ari Aster's debut film, Hereditary, which came out in 2018. So
and
be on the lookout for that.
70 years after The Third Man came out. I just want to throw that out there. 70 years.
Yeah.
We could have been born, died, reincarnated, and died again in the span of The Third Man coming from Hereditary. I'm all for that. We'll watch old movies eventually. Just I don't feel like people care about The Third Man.
People do care about The Third Man. It's a very small few, but they care.
Guess who doesn't care about the old Third Man?
Third Man gave me the best nap of my life. Don't you dare make fun of it.
The better the movie is, the easier I sleep. That should be my tagline. That's like my personal brand.
Whenever eventually we have to make shirts, we'll just make one shirt and it's just that line.
Yeah.
I'm gonna become a professional critic in my review for any movie that comes out that's amazing. I'll be like, it was fantastic. I slept the whole time.
I give that nap a 4 out of 5.
Great.
I was awake for this whole movie.
It's just one.
It was awful. Don't go see it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been the longest episodes of Film Frauds yet. I think we're at
how long?
I'm glad that both my movies I recommended this week got into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, bastard. I think we're at like an hour 15, hour 20.
Wow.
We're at like a
We didn't even
legitimate-
really do a what we've been watching.
Yeah, I know, because we hadn't been watching stuff a lot. That'll be next time. I don't know. I think this podcast is also going to be on actual podcast app by the time people see it.
Mhm.
Maybe. I don't really know.
Guys, before I forget, Hereditary is on Prime Video.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah, you can
is
stream it.
Midsummer on Prime Video as well?
Yes, it is.
I'm gonna have to watch both of them. How long is Hereditary?
I haven't seen it in a while. Probably 2 hours or maybe over 2 hours.
Can we do our predictions real quick for how long Hereditary is? Matt, how long do you think?
2 hours and 10 minutes.
2 hours, 15 minutes.
2 hours 7 minutes.
Damn.
I was right. I said 2 hours 7 minutes.
Oh, that's what you said?
Yeah. All right.
Midsummer is like 2.5 hours or
Ugh.
some shit. It's really long.
All right. Well, this has been Film Frauds, and I'm gonna get the last word. Goodbye.